Atom 2.0 was just announced at the Cosmoverse conference, which I'm the co-founder of. And at Cosmoverse, we had over 1,500 attendees from more than 35 countries that were all there. And the Atom 2.0 announcement was obviously the biggest highlight of the conference, along with one announcement that I think a lot of people did not expect, but it was really, really big. Today, I want to dissect a little bit what this Atom 2.0 vision or this Cosmos Hub white paper is all about, why it's a big deal, but also talk a little bit about the criticisms, especially when it comes to the issuance of atoms over the next 3 years. Now, first of all, why is the Cosmos Hub white paper such a big deal? Well, when Cosmos started initially, they only wrote a white paper about Cosmos as an entire ecosystem, right? And this white paper was actually completed in early 2021 with the shipment of IBC, the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. And when I first heard about Cosmos, and Jack Sempolin told me, like, man, Cosmos is actually complete. Like, the white paper is done. We achieved it. I was like, no crypto project in history has ever accomplished what they promised in the white paper, right? But Cosmos did. However, this, again, was just about the foundation, all these tech stacks that are now existing, right? The Cosmos SDK, Tendermint as a consensus algorithm, the Internet of Blockchains, which is a reality thanks to IBC and connects more than 50 chains at this point successfully. So that's all already a reality. Now, throughout these years, the oldest, biggest, most widely adopted and known chain in the Cosmos ecosystem, which is the Cosmos Hub, the chain on which Atom resides, didn't really have strong positioning, right? And Cosmos pursues this app chain philosophy, which means every application should have its own blockchain. But in that context, what is the purpose? What is the application of the Cosmos Hub? So this question will be resolved with Atom 2.0. It's the first white paper that is specifically dedicated to the Cosmos Hub and Atom only. Well, as I said, the original mission of Cosmos was actually accomplished, right? It was achieved. And the Cosmos Hub in that context had the role to act as an interchain originator, which is already also mentioned in the white paper, which means to basically bootstrap the entire Cosmos idea and to like realize the idea in the first place, to prove that Tendermint works, the Cosmos SDK works, and also that IBC works. Now it's time for the Cosmos Hub to evolve as an interchain service provider. And I think that's also the killer application for the Cosmos Hub, is to act as an interchain service provider to add value to other chains without, and it's very important, without creating dependencies, right? Because Cosmos pursues basically the opposite of the Fed protocol thesis. What the Fed protocol thesis is saying is basically that there's a foundation, a base layer chain that captures all the value, that provides all the security, and everything is just built on top of it, right? But it also means that, that's a massive attack surface or like point of failure or massive like central point of failure. And Cosmos in that sense, with the app chain philosophy, has a way better approach, a lot of more flexibility, which is also why DYDX, for example, chose to migrate over to Cosmos. So in that context, I think the Cosmos Hub as the OG chain in Cosmos, as this voluntary shelling point in Cosmos, the coin with the most liquidity, the most fiat on-ramps, the biggest community, the most token holders, the most distribution, the longest chain, can become a service provider, right? And interchain security is probably the killer application, maybe the main application that makes this idea a reality. And no other chain is actually focusing on that. So interchain security is one major pillar. Liquid staking is another one because, and I think this is also what people underestimate, liquid staking, for one, envisions to increase the bonded rate of atoms. And for two, it also makes Atom a sounder and easier to move in terms of money in Cosmos, right? Because we want Atom to be used in collateral on different applications, right? We want it to be used on UMI and on Kujira and on Osmosis and all these other things, right? We want Atom to be the base money of Cosmos. And I think that's why liquid staking is also a big deal. This is also covered in the white paper. But these things were already clear, right? Like interchain security as a killer application, liquid staking, which makes Atom easier to move and easier to transfer. But the white paper mentions two more things. One is the scheduler and one is the allocator. And I will try to explain it in very simple terms. The scheduler is basically a block space marketplace, which is basically capturing cross-chain MEV. I don't want to go too much into detail with that because I think it's, for one, quite technical. For two, it's also a bit less of a big deal than the allocator. I think the real killer application here is the allocator, which is completely new. And the allocator is basically a capital allocation and incentive alignment feature. What it basically does, maybe in simpler terms, it would be a decentralized VC. So what this Atom 2.0 vision entails is basically the creation of a treasury. This is separate from the Cosmos Hub community pool, which currently has, I think, roughly 1 million Atom in it, which is not much if you compare it to any other big chain. I think Polkadot has $300 million in their treasury. Even Osmosis has a lot more. JUNO has a lot more in dollar terms. But the allocator is in combination with the treasury, because the treasury that the Cosmos Hub Vision 2.0 vision entails should act as a funding mechanism for other protocols, right? To bootstrap the development of other chains, and also, in the best case, make a profit, right? And that profit would go back to the treasury, and that way the hub could fund itself. This is a very bold move. I think there's a lot of unknowns, obviously. This is something that I don't think any other project has ever done, at least not to this degree. And we're going to look into some of the numbers in a second, but this is a pretty big deal, right? And this also means, going back to the interchain service provider theory, that the Cosmos Hub is also a decentralized funding mechanism, right? A decentralized VC, as I said. The big thing is also, obviously, the proposal of a new monetary system for Atom, right? New monetary policy changes. As of now, Atom's tokenomics are exponentially growing, right? Infinitely, basically. Atom has a dynamic inflation rate between 7 and 20%, which is pegged to the bonded ratio, which means that there's a threshold, 2/3, that's the target ratio of atoms that should be staked. If it falls below that threshold, the inflation would automatically go up until a roof of 20%, which would mean the staking rewards would be at 35 or 30, 35, 40% or something like that, depending how low the bonded ratio is. And if it's above 2/3, the inflation rate would go down until a floor of 7%, right? Now, the way they propose to change it is to have a fixed target issuance of 300,000 atoms per month. But that's the end goal after what's called a transition phase. And in a transition phase, we are actually undergoing a hyperinflation for at least 9 months, right? And this is important to understand, and that's also where the critics come in, because some say this would dilute the current stakers. Some say that this is not necessary because we can fund the treasury from other ways, such as the Interchain Foundation, the ICF. And some say this is just way too much money. But if we look at the issuance compared to what it would be before, with the old tokenomics and with the new tokenomics, you can see that first we have this hyperinflation here for at least 9 months. Then we have this pivotal point where Atom becomes less inflationary than it would be if we just keep doing the same tokenomics that we have. And then after around a year and a half, you can already see like Atom gets pretty low in terms of inflation, right? And basically almost entirely gets rid of inflation. So there are some calculations that say Atom will have an inflation of roughly 1%, which is then the question, where do the staking rewards come in? Why would people stake? I'll also talk about this in a second, but this is the issuance model as envisioned in the current version of the white paper. These things are all in the community forum, by the way, right now, so people are just commenting on it, and I also invite you to provide feedback there. But yeah, this would make Atom a more suitable monetary premium, a more suitable version of money, and also made it much more interesting for investors, right? But yeah, and you can read the white paper actually here. I'll also provide a link down there. Now let's look into some of the critics and some of the numbers, more importantly. So in fact, here on the Cosmos Network forum, there are very lively discussions. I will not be able to go into all of them, but one thread which was opened by Jae Kwon that envisions the Atom 1 constitution proposal addresses some of the critics that he has for Atom 2.0. One of the main ones is obviously that in the first year, 70 million Atom are going to the treasury, which he finds ludicrous and way too much. And he would say that the ICF should actually donate their atoms that they had from the fundraiser, whatever is left, back into the DAO and basically fund the treasury in that way without having to inflate Atom, right? Because that's obviously a big thing. But yeah, I think there's also responses here from Zaki Manian in terms of why an ICF donation, for example, is challenging. And obviously, there have been years of work in that. There's big teams, there's contracts involved, there's legal stuff involved. I think those points also make sense. Personally, I think it would be awesome if the ICF could just, put all their funds or whatever is left over, whatever they can afford to put into the treasury so that we don't have to inflate that much. But at the same time, I also think that if we fund the treasury through inflation, this would not directly dilute the stakeholders. It would indirectly, obviously, dilute the stakeholders. But it would probably be a pill that we have to swallow for the longevity and sustainability of the Cosmos Hub. But I'm still in between those two camps, and I'm not really 100% sure. I think it's a shot in the unknown after all. Like, either way we go, I think there's uncertainties, and it's an experiment. So we have to see how it plays out. Also, if that amount of money is even needed, right, to bootstrap consumer chains, right? Because we already have a couple of consumer chains lined up, namely Quicksilver, Stride, Neutron, which is big, right? They're already funded, all of them, as well as USDC. Which was also announced at Cosmoverse, right? Circle is building a consumer chain for native USDC issuance. This is actually a really, really good thread with a lot of back and forth also between Zaki and Jay. And you can tell here by these numbers, this part alone, that after 12 months, when the transition phase has started, and this obviously has to go through governance and all those kind of things and on-chain proposals, we would issue 40 million, more than 40 million extra atoms, right? Which is over 400 million US dollars, right? So the total atom supply would be at 390 million as opposed to 349 million if we just continue with this current inflation model, right? With the transition phase in the first 12 months, we would have a treasury with 56 million atoms in it, right? That's like 500-600 million US dollars. That's a big, big war chest that we could build up over the next 12 months that is double the amount that Polkadot has, and pretty much probably the biggest treasury in crypto, held by a DAO. We would probably double our inflation in that sense, 101% extra. So instead of 39 million atoms minted, we would mint 80 million atom, and then only 23 million go to stakers as opposed to 39 million, right? And that's the whole criticism here, is that Atom stakers get diluted, right? They don't get as much, and actually the treasury gets a lot, which is inflated out of thin air. Based on some of the critics that Jae Kwon expressed and also some other community members, Jay actually came up with the Atom 1 constitution, which he already teased in some forum posts, and he already said that we should have something like that. Jay is also a big proponent of hub minimalism, which means to not have too many features and complexity on the Cosmos Hub. He was also very much against implementing Cosmos on the Cosmos Hub, which ended up not happening. But now there's a consumer chain called Neutron that is bringing Cosmos, aka smart contract capability, to the Cosmos Hub. So for him, interchain security is basically pretty much the end game application for the Cosmos Hub, the only application the Cosmos Hub should focus on, and the way that there could be more flexibility and more value accrual for Atom would probably be to implement another token, right? The Photon token. And I have talked about this with Jae Kwon here on my channel a couple of months ago. So the idea is to have the Atom token as, the voting token, economic incentive shares, and the security bond for the Cosmos Hub. There's also some of the ideas here, how to preserve also the underlying security of the chain. And in the Photon token, which should be distributed in a one-to-one airdrop 2 atom people. And this photon token should be inflated at a constant fixed rate equal to 5% of the initial distribution forever, and paid to staked atom holders, right? To staked atom holders. So this is really, really interesting. A completely different concept of what we read in the Atom 2.0 white paper. But yeah, this is what he's proposing in this constitution. Also in terms of the ICS, the Interchain Security System, that there should also be different validator sets in different geographical regions to ensure distribution and decentralization, a tax system to fund the community pool, treasury DAOs, where you should have real people managing that, voted by a committee and eventually by governance of the Cosmos Hub. And I think this is just a very small draft and first initial idea, but it's still interesting to see that he's still very active and contributes at least ideas. Yeah, we have to wait and see how that will play out, how also people react. But I love to also see these conversations between Zaki and Jay, at least on the forum. And Jay also had calls with Ethan Buckman. So let's see what comes out of this, also out of this constitution idea. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have some more information now that might help you take smarter decisions when you vote, because the proposal for Atom 2.0 will be on chain pretty soon, I guess, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So take part in the forum discussions. Maybe debate with some people if you have some comments, feedbacks. Obviously, this white paper is very vast. It also contains liquid staking and governance, MEV stuff, right? So there's different fields of expertise that are required. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I'm excited to hear your feedback, your thoughts about Atom 2.0. I hope if you were Cosmos that you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and be good.